Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Wisdom in Times of Crisis online event, where we get together for a week to explore what are the challenges and opportunities that this unique time offers us. And what is the teachings, what is the wisdom that this time gives us to pause and reflect. My name is Zaya Benazzo, and I'm delighted to have today with us H.A. Almaas, Hamid Ali. Welcome, Hamid. Thank you so much for being with us today and offering your support and your time and your wisdom.
Well, my pleasure to be with you again, Zaya.
Thank you.
I'm happy to be here.
Very happy to see you again. And I'm just going to quickly introduce you for those of the viewers that might not know who you are. I'm sure most people know, but Hamid Ali, H.A. Almaas, is author and a spiritual teacher, and he's the founder of Diamond Approach. And Diamond Approach is a unique spiritual teaching which uses inquiry as a main practice. And Diamond Approach sees freedom as a living realization. And the practice is not about transcending our individuality, but embodying our transcended non-dual essence into our everyday life. And also, according to Hamid, according to your teaching, Almaas, realization is a dynamic process that is never ending and keeps unfolding and keeps revealing to us more and more in time and in space. So welcome. And I just wanted to start with our first question that we're asking everyone who is participating on the summit. And what do you see about this time? Like, what do you see that this crisis, if you see it as a crisis, is offering us to see more about who we are, about ourselves, and about reality?
It's definitely a crisis. It is actually a sad situation that many are suffering. You know, many are sick, many are dying, many are losing loved ones, many are losing their jobs, many are alone and lonely with social distancing. So there's more suffering around the globe than usual. There's always suffering. Human beings suffer, but this is more, you know, and so it is a crisis. And it's not a crisis, it's not an existential crisis, but it is difficult times and challenging times for many people around the globe. And the interesting thing about it is the first time ever that it's a crisis that everybody's involved in.
Exactly.
There's no country, no nation, no people who are exempt. Everybody. That's sort of what's new in it. And that part can bring in an opportunity, which is the fact of recognizing we're all connected. We cannot separate ourselves. There's no way to separate one nation from another, one race from another. We're all the same. I mean, interesting. The virus is equalizing us instead of pure awareness. Pure awareness that many people know equalizes everybody, but very few people know about pure awareness and impacted by it. But the virus is getting around.
Absolutely.
So it is, in some sense, a time, as you said, to reflect, partly because of difficulty, and partly many people are home by themselves. They have more time. What do they do with themselves? They are with themselves. So many people are with themselves, and they are experiencing difficulties, you know, in terms of some loved ones or the job. So usually that presents an opportunity, that some people can utilize and some people won't. Some people will just buckle under, feel hopeless and helpless. It's usual difficult challenges. Some people can't handle it well, and their worst self comes out. But some people rise to the occasion and can rise to the occasion and use it for both to possibility to know themselves in a deeper way, and same time to contribute, to make a difference, for their better self to come out and help or be of assistance, do some service that helps the community at large. And the one thing I was thinking, because the title here is wisdom, talking about wisdom. Now, for me, wisdom doesn't mean spiritual knowledge. Wisdom doesn't mean words of wisdom. Wisdom means spiritual experience that is being expressed in one's action and living. Yeah. A wise person is a person who knows how to live in the world and behave and act according to the knowledge that they actually embody, or knowledge that they have realized. So wisdom is another step after realization, you see, after awakening. So not every awakened person is wise. They're wise in the sense they know, they could speak wisely, but to live that wisdom is another thing. So in the Western tradition, wisdom has to do with living.
Yeah, embodying, living the realizations. Is dynamic. Is not knowledge. Wisdom is not knowledge.
Yeah. In the Eastern tradition, frequently they talk about wisdom as of, like Buddhists say, wisdom means knowledge of emptiness. That's not the meaning of wisdom in English, actually, because in the Western tradition, it's considered, for instance, like King Solomon was considered wise. Why? Not but what he did, what he was able to do and govern wisely. Yeah. So that's an important thing for everybody to know, and it is this time actually that brings forth that. This time, it is an opportunity for us to learn about ourselves, and a deeper, and for some of us might be the first time we look at ourselves, because we're alone, there are all these difficulties, what's left? You. So some people might occur to them, look inside instead of just watch Netflix all the time, so that can happen. Some people think, well, the whole human race is going to be transformed. I don't think so. Most of the human race are not that smart or that mature to use the occasion. So I think generally human race will change some, will move a notch or two, but it's not like human race will be awakened and become wise. But there will be people, hopefully by the time it is over, we'll have some more people who have deepened their knowledge. I think the people who are on a spiritual path are the most likely to utilize the situation and to deepen their practice and their experience, and to put it to practice, to really to express it. Like if they have compassion, or they have awareness, or they have an inner courage, how does that appear in this world, in this situation? And some people might be able to even awaken I'm curious to see after 2 years how many people have awakened out of this.
Or begin to awaken, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, awakening is a big deal thing, you know. Many teachers that say, well, it's time for awakening. I said, what are you talking about? Most people they just, it's be good for them just to connect to the depth, to feel some compassion, love, some inner security, fearlessness, stuff like that. Awakening is a big jump.
And do you make a distinction between awakening and realization, or you use them interchangeably?
You know, realization is the establishing of awakening. Awakening, you awaken to what you are. Realization means it has become established. You are that. You know, it doesn't go away.
Is the maturity?
That's the difference. Yeah, yeah. So that means establishment, it's stability in the awakened condition, which is not an easy thing. It's the second step. The third step is the living it, the wisdom of how to express it and how it comes through one's body and mind and heart into the world and communication with the world and people in it. And I think at the present time, there are opportunity for all of those, you know. But for the people who already have some understanding, some spiritual activation or spiritual access or spiritual illumination, one level or another, it's time for them to put it to practice, to really, you know, both for themselves, not to get depressed or hopeless, to use to connect with themselves deeper and recognize they are indestructible and they are not physical, that the spirit cannot be affected by anything, including viruses. And another thing is how to really bring it out into the world, how we interact, what we do, how do we contribute in this way. Many people are coming out contributing. We notice, Zaya, many people are doing a lot of good. I mean, doctors, nurses, even some of the governors are really putting their career on the line by trying to do what is best. So many people, those people, I think they're wise. They have some wisdom. They might not know where the wisdom coming from. They don't have the inner experience, those people. They don't know it, you see. But for people who have spiritual orientation, it's obvious when they are being compassionate. They feel the compassion. They feel it as a presence, as a consciousness. When they are being courageous or fearless, they feel the state of fearlessness and courage, and they feel the strength and power in it. You know, so but many are expressing it, you know. So people say the best of human spirits coming out, and I think it is coming out in many places. But what is the human spirit? Yeah, you know, it is expressing itself usually in times of crisis or challenge. It does come out sometime for some people, and it's good to see that happening, and that humanity still have some of that in them, even though it's hidden. It comes out at those times. But some of us, we might be aware of it, and can see how if we have kindness and compassion. What does that mean? I think part of kindness, compassion, for instance, Zaya, is to really follow the regulation, follow the guidelines to keep social distancing, because we do it not just for ourselves but for others. Exactly. You see, and it is so I keep social distance, not because I just don't want to die, but I don't want others to get sick. Exactly. And I know many people are doing it that way, and governors are saying you want to do it that way. But it is it's an interesting time where
Yeah.
it is a spiritual principle actually.
As every
What
move.
is good for you is good for everybody. What's good for everybody is good for you. That happens in the spiritual realm usually, but it's happening physically.
Now, with every movement, we have to consider others as well. That's
Yes.
very beautiful. Exactly.
Yeah, we have to consider other. But to really do that, it is an expression of love and caring and compassion and recognition of the preciousness of other people.
Hmm.
You know? And some people don't do it. Some people don't follow exactly because they don't have the inner.
Yeah, and I've been very sad actually to observe that within the spiritual community, there has been actually a little bit of tensions and separation because a lot of people don't believe in the virus or they believe in conspiracy theories. And actually, it's been very sad to observe that. And yeah, and
Well, I mean, yeah, for a while, some people believed in that it is not real. There was denial and
there was denial. Yeah,
believing
maybe it's a human way to deal
hoax.
with fear when
I
we.
think partly people just denied it. They don't want to believe it's true. Just the various governments, including the World Health Organization, didn't really want to believe it's really going to be that bad. You know, people blaming, oh, you didn't tell us. I think they were in denial. It's as simple as that. It's the
It's a
same thing as
human
the US
response.
government. They don't want to believe it's that bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, but they can't deny it now. It's obvious. You know.
And what's fascinating, and I wonder what to observe how this pandemic has really stopped the world, has made us pause, like globally, and nothing else like meditations and spiritual practices and activism calls for reducing CO2 emission. Nothing changed human behavior as much as this virus. Do you think at the bottom of that is fear of death? What do you think? Why this pandemic had such a power in a way to put global world life on hold?
Yeah, it's like being invaded by alien invaders. The whole world has to stop and take stock of the situation. Well, I think fear of death is definitely a big part of it because it is possible that one can die. You know, and you don't have to be old to die. We find out more and more. The more we find out about it, the more we know it is dangerous. So it is fear of death. I think that's part of it because it's instinctual. The fear of death or the desire to survive is an organic biological response to danger. So it is the most powerful force, actually, the most human being experience, which is the instinct to survive. So that's come into operation, I think. I mean, so much so that people were agreed to do it, although they were losing their jobs and stuff like that, and accepting isolation and not contact with people. So I think yes, that's a big part of it. I don't think that's the only thing. There are people who are doing it because they have what I call true conscience, which is a conscience that arises from a spiritual illumination, a spiritual connection, which is the conscience that is dictated by the true qualities of our spiritual nature. It's love, it's compassion, it's intelligence, it's caring. That appears, so it's not like fear. It's not my mind telling me I have to be good. No, I'm being good naturally, spontaneously, and I'm generous and caring naturally, spontaneously. And the interesting thing about the spiritual conscience is not consciousness, conscience, is that it both has the caring and the love and wanting to do what is best, but has in it discipline. That's one thing many people don't know about the spiritual conscience, because not everybody who knows about spiritual experiences spiritual conscience. Spiritual conscience is a specific way of experiencing spiritual nature, which is when we experience it, we feel grounded, realistic, down to earth. We know our capacities, we know our limitations, and we do what is needed. We have the capacity to discipline ourselves. And because a lot of the social distance requires a lot of discipline. You see, we have to discipline ourselves, not to go do what impulse happens. I need to be aware of it and keep it in check and stay away from, infecting other people or getting infected. So the discipline is an important part of usually, for most people, their conscience comes what we call superego, their inner kind of historical, keep them good, keep them in check, they call it conscience and make them feel guilty and stuff. This is not out of guilt. This is natural, spontaneous. So that is part of the wisdom that can come through.
And would you say this is spontaneous, or we cultivate it through our spiritual practices, this kind of discipline to embody our deepest realizations?
So many spiritual practices require discipline. Like if you meditate every day and all that, you require discipline. However, that's not the same thing as discipline in life, discipline in action. It is not a cultivation. It is a matter of discovering a certain way we can experience our spiritual nature. Because spiritual nature has many manifestations. One of the manifestations is the true conscience. When I experience the true conscience, I feel like an immensity. It's like I feel I am in the middle of a big cathedral, like huge, like Notre Dame Cathedral, something like that. Immense walls and true reality, groundedness. So there's a sense because the immensity is a protection. It's a protection of the truth, protection of reality, protection of the view of reality. And that brings in some kind of will, true will, and that makes it possible for us to be disciplined. And the discipline then appears effortlessly, you see. It's not like I have to really be strong and fight. No, the discipline flows out naturally. We are naturally disciplined in terms of what we do, my social distance. In this case, we have a particular situation, which is social distancing, how we relate to each other. If we are in the grocery store, how we do it. There are actual practical things, and how to be disciplined in a way to protect ourselves and protect others. So that discipline requires awareness, as you can tell, awareness, and it expresses the goodness of our spiritual nature, but in that part of the wisdom. You cannot be wise in the world if you don't have true conscience. Part of expression in the world is true conscience, which is living from conscience. Gurdjieff talk about that, about conscience, that many people don't have conscience. And you have to develop what he called objective conscience. That's what he called it, objective conscience. Yeah. You see, I'm calling it true conscience, but it's the same thing.
So if I must, once that is developed, then it's expressed in every moment of our everyday life. That true consciousness kind of infuses our daily actions, or even when we're in the grocery store, there could be the sense of immensity, or
yes,
that's what you're pointing to.
Yeah, it could be. It has immensity, but also it can express itself as a delicacy and
You remind me.
tenderness at the same
Yeah.
time.
We had a conversation with Matthew Fox last weekend, and he
Yeah,
was talking about wisdom as sublime, terrifying beauty.
yeah.
Uh, Julian of Norwich has described, and she lived during the plague as well in
Hmm.
the 13th century. So
Yeah.
it's
So
sublime,
from my perspective, if we can express that in the world, how does that appear?
yes, yes,
We can have that experience. I mean, spiritual experience is beauty in general, and some of it are more beautiful than others. I mean, part of why people like non-dual, because everything is beautiful. The whole world is beautiful. But how do you live your life then? You know?
yes.
So here it's a challenge. In fact, for people who are on a spiritual path, it's a good challenge to live their realization, because we have a situation where we really need to be true. We have to, you know, come to terms, and we have to rise to the occasion,
Mm.
and not just stay home and just meditate. I mean,
And
we can do that, we can meditate, but we still have to live.
yeah. And what, I mean, in your work, there is, I know in your teachings, a lot of your students spend many years doing psychodynamic work, unpacking early conditioning and patterns.
Yeah.
Uh, what do you say? What is the relationship between those early conditionings and our ability to express our realizations in our everyday life?
You cannot really express your one's realization in everyday life if we don't work through our conditioning.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can, but it will come out crooked.
Yes.
It will come out sometimes, at least, with inappropriate behavior or incorrect behavior or incomplete behavior, because that's what's in the way. If that wasn't for that, it would be easy for realization to express itself in the world. But because what happens for most people, they will be in some kind of sublime place or a non-dual place. They get out of the house, they start behaving, they come back, they become their ordinary self, old self. You see, they can't be that sublime place while they're walking and talking and shopping and interacting and all that. And that is a big step for every path. I mean, that's known for all the paths. That's the next step. Some people call it actualization, like Zen call it actualization, and it takes longer than realization or awakening. Most paths know that because you have to work through everything. You have to work out all the illusion, beliefs, conditioning. There's a lot, and that's an ongoing process.
And would you say that we ever outgrow those conditionings, or we just become more intimate with them? And
No, you outgrow your conditioning. Not outgrow, they won't be there anymore. They dissolve. If you
those,
understand them and if you really become aware of them and recognize them and know what they're about, where they come from, and you realize they're not true about you, they're true about somebody you were in the past, they naturally dissolve. Truth dissolves them, and they won't be there. Like many of the patterns and habitual way of doing things that I used to have in the past, they just don't care. I don't have to deal with them. It's not like I'm aware of them and don't act. No, they're not there.
they don't arise anymore.
They don't arise,
Okay.
But it takes a long time. It takes a long time because there's lots of them, layers upon layers upon layers of things,
Yeah. I
And I
understand.
think most spiritual teaching, they know that. They know that the true realization to mature. It's called maturation of realization, so that it becomes lived. Takes time. No, it was actually, I don't know if I mentioned that to you, it was Dogen who one talks about who's the founder of the Soto Zen. He's one of the greatest enlightened people in history. A friend of his asked him in his old age, well, my friend, how's your realization? He said, well, my realization, well, thank you. However, my body is still having difficulty going along with it. So that's, that tells you, I mean, yes, you can experience it. Does your body go with it? Is it expressed through the body? Is the body completely become transparent, completely has no tensions, no blockages against any of the kind of wisdom and awareness and luminosity? So it comes through, you see.
And that's why you call this never-ending process, right? Dynamic.
Yeah, it takes a long time. The conditioning has an end. You can finish with the conditioning. It takes a long time, and we can be finished with it and live freely. We don't have to think about, behaving spontaneously. It just happens, and it is not just free, and it is just right. It is what is needed exactly, no more, no less. It's economic, it's intelligent, precise. That's part of the, the wisdom.
Is that the right action, kind of what?
Yes, that's something that's called right action. Yeah. It will be right action, but right action becomes natural action here. Yeah. You're not thinking about the right action, it's just your action. And however, that doesn't end the journey. When you mentioned before, realization continues. That is not because of conditioning. What stops, what makes, we can finish with conditioning and will be realized or awakened. However, there are other possible realizations that haven't happened. That's not because of conditioning, but because of views of reality, concept about what is real, what is possible. We don't know what's possible, what's not possible. You see, the fact that we don't know about the possibility of experiencing something, that not knowing can become, we can take it as a position that that's not possible. You see, we don't know it's possible to become a barrier to the new thing to appear. So that becomes, Dogen called it delusion, and he said delusion doesn't end with enlightenment. Enlightenment has delusion. Meaning, even when you're enlightened, there's still concepts and ideas about reality that not because you are conditioned, because it's sort of natural to assume, because the state of each state of realization has its view of reality, right? If you take non-dual realization, the view is all pure awareness and consciousness, and everything in the manifestation of that awareness and consciousness, and all of that. That is a view, however, and the person can become a mental view or at least an attitude. But there are realizations that have nothing to do with that. That's right. Yeah. There are realizations that don't have anything to do whether everything is a manifestation of consciousness. There are realizations, like even Zen has a realization called suchness. What they mean is everything as it is. They don't say it's consciousness. No, everything is as it is, pure as it is. Yes. You see, that's a different kind of realization. If we have to believe everything is an expression of consciousness, we won't be able to experience that suchness.
And then in suchness, there is no place of knowing necessary. You don't need to.
No, you just know that everything is being itself. Like I know you Zaya, in suchness. Zaya is Zaya. And Zaya is Zaya as Zaya is. Is she physical? Is she mental? Is she spiritual? That's really a conclusion or
Right.
a conceptualization. Zaya is just Zaya.
Yeah.
And it is something you, in that sense, there is knowing. But it's operative knowing. And instead of, you know, it's a different thing. It's not a matter of whether it's your nature's awareness or consciousness or that becomes irrelevant.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. I mean, what you are is in some sense unknowable,
Exactly.
not determinable. You know, it's beyond consciousness or physicality or something like that. You're more mysterious than that.
Way more. Yeah.
So I'm just giving that as an example.
Right.
That a kind of realization that is being prevented not because of conditioning, but because of an ignorance that is unconscious, that we never thought of it, we never conceptualized it. You see, we never had to deal with it. We assume, like, you know, just like an ordinary person before they experience non-duality, they take being separate as how reality is. They don't question it. That's how it is. Everybody is like that. Everybody is separate. You're
Which
separate, like your body is separate, and it doesn't occur to them that it could be something else. No. So when they experience non-duality, it's like, what happened? That's a complete way of experiencing things. You see, because it's partly their conditioning there, but partly it's just doesn't. It's a different way of looking at things. You see, and the same thing then from the non-dual to other realization. There are many different teaching out different realizations.
At this moment, like many people are confronted to kind of live a little bit more on the edge of unknown. Like our lives are reshaped by this crisis, and many of us don't know, let's say, how our lives would look like in practically, I would say, not as our true nature, but practically. And also many people have to meet grief, have to
Yes.
meet fear of death. I was just wondering if you have some teachings or that you could offer as a practice for this time where we are confronted with something.
Yeah, in some sense, it's an opportunity because unknown. And the unknown for the ordinary person is a scary place, is untenable place. The unknown, not knowing, for somebody who's practicing, is a good place. It means a possibility of finding something new. See, you don't know, that means you don't know the possibility to find out. See, if you believe you know, that prevents you from finding something new. So that not knowing can be seen as an opportunity, but also for many people will make them uncertain, make them insecure, make them scared. And many people are scared, and many people are insecure in this situation, which is normal for most people. And that's why for people like that, they just need to, I mean, they can either try to make connection to other people. I mean, they can, not necessarily in person, but you talk with people online and phone and all of that. But also to look inward to find out, is there, if you feel you don't know, let yourself accept it as a gift. The not knowing is the spirit beginning to reveal itself, because the spirit is not known and ultimately indefinable. So spiritual nature frequently appears at the beginning as not knowing, and knowing uncertainty, but and not knowing, if I really get into the space of not knowing, that knowing is an expression of a specific way that consciousness manifests itself. which is stillness and silence. And that stillness and silence, the effect on the mind is not knowing. There's nothing to know. And for many of us, it was scary, but it is really, first of all, it can take us to stillness, peacefulness, instead of fear, but also a possibility of the arising of something new. And so we can use it, instead of being scared of it. But for many people, it will be difficult for them to use it because they're used to knowing. They know what they're going to do next. They know what's happening. And in reality, our spiritual teachings say we really don't know what's going to happen. Most people believe they know what's going to happen. It's sort of probabilistically knowing, really. You're sort of most likely to think, the sun's going to come out, next day. And, in fact, in physics, it could give you a probability, a very high probability the sun will rise next day. But they don't know 100%. Not 100% for sure. So not knowing, for me, is in my work, especially work for inquiry, it always begins with not knowing. First, you see what you think you know, and then by inquiring into it, you realize you don't know what's going on. Why is it there? What's behind it? And the not knowing is the beginning of the transformation, beginning of entry into a different realm. So if we are engaged in a spiritual practice, not knowing is good news.
Right. Yeah. And if we're at the beginning of the spiritual path, it can be terrifying. And that's why many of us hold on to.
Because sometimes the not knowing could take us into emptiness. Silence is a sense of emptiness. And for many people, that kind of silence, emptiness is scary because we're used to the chatter in our mind that keeps us company, make us feel that we exist. And so everything goes quiet. That can be scary. And many people want that peace, but they want a peace. Most people want peace while the chatter there. They don't want peace to mean no chatter.
It's comforting, the chatter. It keeps.
But real peace means there's no chatter. It's really quiet. Inside.
And would you say in that quietness, still pure emotions can arise that are not?
And the stillness of consciousness and true quality of the heart can arise. And I wouldn't call them emotion. You call them pure emotion. That's a good way of saying it. I will say the spiritual virtues or spiritual qualities like love, compassion, contentment, sense of joy, sense of happiness. Like, I've been doing groups with, online Zoom groups, meetings and teaching with some of my groups. And by the end of it, everybody's full of joy and love, and even though everybody's there home, there's viruses all around, because of the connection.
Yeah. And what about grief? Is there a place for grief that is not entangled with a psychological story necessarily, but
there is grief, there's sadness that can happen for the suffering of others. Grief usually means loss. Is grieving a loss. Now, if I am my true nature, my spiritual nature doesn't grieve. It is always complete in itself. So the grief has to do more with the ordinary consciousness, recognizing loss. So it's not wrong, it's not bad, but it is Grief means I've lost something. Who's losing?
Mm-hmm.
If you have no self, there's no loss. You see, so you don't experience the grief. You just feel the absence of, you know, of whatever you lost. That it is not there,
Right.
and basically that changes, shifts reality in perception in a different way, and. Usually, if the other person who I lost was suffering, what arises in me is sorrow for the suffering. There's some sadness, sorrow, kindness. Sadness that brings kindness, but there's sorrow. Sorrow is a real spiritual emotion.
Not grief, sorrow.
When you experience it, it's like a nectar of sort. It's like a love of sort. It's sorrow, because sorrow is nothing like guilt, nothing like remorse, nothing like feeling bad. Sorrow is just a real recognition of the suffering of another, a response, because sorrow that they suffer. So there are things get subtle because there's a spectrum of things. There's all the way from reactive emotions, to true emotion in the moment, in the sense you're sad because something actually really happened now, has nothing to do with your conditioning, all the way to just kindness for some suffering happening instead of sadness, or sorrow if there is loss. Yeah. But grief is one of those. A real thing is not because of conditioning. It's not normal for the human soul, human being, to experience grief when there's some loss of something we love.
Yeah, and many humans, I'm bringing also grief because a lot of people experience grief because of the loss of our planet, because of loss of forest, and this is our home. Human home is this planet.
Yeah, we haven't lost our planets. We lost the way it is, the way we like it. It's not as habitable as usual.
That's right. Yeah.
Maybe its beauty is marred some. Its beauty is not the same. It's not as beautiful. We pollute it. We exploit it and stuff like that. And in that sense, there is some kind of loss of. Actually, that I did a teaching on that, in March, and it's the part that teaching that has to do with that more than anything else has to do with true conscience, because Earth is our home, but it's also our mother.
Exactly.
You see, we grew out of it. We grow in it, made out of it. It's like a mother, some sense, and so it loves us, and like a mother, take care of us, and we need to feel that love and love the earth the same way as we love our good mother. Some people don't love their mother. I'm talking about the good mother. How if your mother was good to you, you love it because the earth's taking care of us all these years.
Yeah.
And made it possible for life to exist, to evolve until we are here. We are. So yes, that brings in the whole thing about climate change and other things. But the virus, of course, interferes with things and makes the earth is not as easy to live in.
Yeah.
We haven't lost it. It's just it's invaded.
And throughout human history, we've had many pandemics. So in a way, this is nothing new. Or do you think there is something new here for humanity?
We've had, well, I don't think whether we had pandemics.
The plague lasted for 500 years.
Yeah, but then it wasn't the whole earth.
That's right. It was Europe.
It was mostly in Europe and some in Asia, but didn't go I don't know, it was pandemic for the known world, but there were many parts of the world we didn't go to. So this is the first time in every continent, everywhere.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe they were pandemics, they called them pandemic, but this is real global pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the first time actually where even Aboriginal people or the Eskimos and they're all experiencing it. And it doesn't matter where you are, how far you are. So it's, in that sense, it's unifying for the human race. And I'm hoping it is possible that human being will emerge from it with a recognition that we are one family.
Right.
We are one body. The humanity is one, really. I mean, that's what it is physically. So now, out of necessity, we are one. We're not divisible. Now, do we learn from that so that after this passage we continue recognizing that? We'll have to see. I think some of it will remain with some people. I don't know whether for the whole human race, whether people remember or will just get busy trying to get a job and get married and busy with the usual life, which is what makes people away from themselves. They're too busy with external, as you know. The spirituality is usually a luxury. It's a time when you have time, have space to look inward. But also, spirituality can happen at time of adversity, as you know. Some people, their spirituality happened because of the difficulties they were dealing with. It can happen, but that's not the usual.
I think
Most spirituality happens when we have time and space.
Right. But in every spiritual teaching, there is the via negativa, the dark night of the soul. There is always a crisis that provides opportunity for us to see more of reality.
Yeah, but you see, the dark night of the soul is an inner process. It doesn't really. You could be a billionaire and have dark night of the soul if you're really spiritual.
Right. Exactly.
It's an inner thing. But there are people who experience outer adversity and that led them to greater realization. There are instances of that. It does happen. In fact, the more connected we are, the more that can happen, that we could go to greater freedom. So it is an opportunity, I think, now, but we must not. Some people think it's an opportunity, great. That doesn't mean it's wonderful. It's really trouble for most people. Yeah. For most people, it is just a headache, suffering, and limitation. Yeah. And we need to recognize that and be sensitive to most of humanity. Just because they're not awakened doesn't mean they're not human. They're human just like us, like all of us. And they're all capable of enlightenment. And because of that, they all deserve the same caring. Even though they might not understand, might not see it as an opportunity, our heart goes for them. I feel very sad much of the time for what's happening. Although I feel happy, whatever, when I'm teaching and all that, but I do, it is difficult. It's heart-wrenching to see what's happening.
Yeah. Well,
so I hope you're happy some of the time.
I am, and actually, I've been sharing, and I feel there is an excitement that I felt right from the beginning, also when this crisis started, because it just our normal, the usual is disrupted, and when there is a disruption of our habits, I see potential for me to experience more.
Yeah, for me, it's actually great. For me, if I was thinking of myself, it's a perfect situation because I get to travel around the world without going anywhere,
and getting in
without having to get in an airplane. I'm teaching people, groups everywhere. And also, I like being alone, being, in a small place. I don't have to go. I don't really do much outside. So walk around and visit friends. I miss friends. I usually visit. I don't visit them. But I'm being by myself. I'm just being feel me, which is nice.
Wonderful. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
for us, it's giving us also opportunity to kind of reflect really what Send is about. And, because when we're organizing live events, it's one thing after another. We're always in this stream of practicalities and deadlines. And now actually it's nice to have that disruption and to see other possibilities.
Yeah, well, you have sort of vacation in some sense.
That's right. Yeah. And I have
And as you said, you have not knowing, which is an opportunity for you. You don't know what's the next thing, what to do.
Yeah.
For me, because we're doing things online more than we don't usually. We teach in person. Doing online is giving us a new understanding of what's possible, new ways, new platform that teaching can happen. I'm not thinking it's going to replace the usual in-person thing, but it's an additional thing that has some advantages to it. Because for some people, to be online, like you and I talking, it feels like we're really close to each other, right? Like you're in my office, sort of. I am in your office, right? So for some people like that, because when there's a big group and they're out there and the teacher, they're farther away, they barely can see them. Yeah, but here everybody who asks questions right there with the presenter, with the teacher, right, interacting with them, that's one thing I'm finding out that many people appreciate.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Hamid, for this beautiful conversation and for your time. I want to be cautious not to take more of your time and energy. And I wish you all the best. And
I'm always happy to do what is best, what is needed. I'm always available when times like this happen, or times like if need, or I can contribute, because that's why I'm here.
And you've always
for that, I won't be here. I would have left a long time ago.
Very generous, and you always supported him, and we have a lot of appreciation and gratitude for that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me, and good luck with the whole, conference. I'm sure there are many people who can contribute their wisdom and understanding. And
so.
Yeah. I'm sure you're doing live thing, you're doing recorded things, and so it's a good idea, I think.
We're learning. Yes.
No, you're learning to be of service. You've always been in service, but you're doing it in a different way.
That's right.
How you're finding the way how to be useful and in service.
We jump and then we start finding the way. That's a little bit our practice that at times is quite challenging, that this is a little bit the Zen way. You jump and then you find your way.
Yeah, but you see, you had some because you've already been doing online teaching from before. Yes. So you already know about how to do it that way. So it's a matter of just applying it in a different way.
That's right. Yeah.
The in-person thing that you do, that's a challenge. How are you going to deal with that?
Exactly. And what's needed and how we will see that's the inquiry in the next.
Yeah, and people love it. I know they like being together and meeting different people, all that. And here they have to meet them online.
Right. Yeah.
Different kind of meeting. I hope it doesn't become new normal.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Some of these can stay, but I still hope we
Some
can.
of it. I think it's an additional thing. It's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good talking to you, Zaya.
Likewise. And I hope after this we get a chance to share dinner.
Good to see your smiley face.
Thank you. And good to see you looking wonderful, like I said at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, till next time.
Yes, till next time.
Yeah, and I wish everybody well. And I will say for everybody, stay safe and be in peace.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hamid.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.